Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching NET25 World News. On tonight's top stories. The Israeli military launched a targeted strike on Hezbollah in Beirut, Lebanon's capital. Israel claims the attack killed multiple senior Hezbollah members, including a top commander. Also tonight, tensions in Asia's key waters dominate as U.S. President Joe Biden hosts leaders from Australia, India, and Japan in Delaware for the Quad Leaders Summit, focusing on conflicts with China in the South China Sea. And later, a young talented artist is taking the art world by storm. At just 3 years old, Lawrence Schwartz is already making waves with his extraordinary acrylic paintings. The news starts now. Tensions in Asia's key waterways take priority as U.S. President Joe Biden hosts the leaders of Australia, India, and Japan in Delaware to strengthen cooperation against China. The Quad Leaders Summit will focus on rising conflicts in the South China Sea, territorial disputes, and illegal Chinese fishing in Indo-Pacific waters, according to U.S. officials.
President Biden will host the fourth in-person Quad Leaders Summit in Wilmington, Delaware. The president looks forward to welcoming Prime Minister of Australia, Prime Minister of India, and the Prime Minister of Japan. This will be President Biden's first time hosting foreign leaders in Wilmington as president, a reflection of his deep personal relationships with each of the Quad leaders and the importance of the Quad to all of our countries.
The leaders are expected to issue a stronger joint statement on security, including the South China Sea and North Korea. They will also discuss health, technology, and infrastructure. Biden, nearing the end of his term, will pass the presidency to either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, with concerns over the Quad's future stability as leadership changes loom in Japan and Australia. China views the Quad as an effort to contain its influence. A new maritime security initiative could send a strong signal to China, showing that its aggressive actions will face coordinated resistance, and India, typically cautious about defense cooperation, may become more open to the idea in response to China's recent actions. Trump plans to meet Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi next week, with India hosting the next Quad meeting after the U.S. elections.
So when India, which is a very big abuser, he happens to be coming to meet me next week, and Modi, he's fantastic. I mean, fantastic man. A lot of these leaders are fantastic. You have to understand one thing. They're 100%. These people are the sharpest people. They're not a little bit backward. They are at the top. You know the expression, they're at the top of their game, and they use it against us. But India is very tough.
Russia said the West was applying blatant pressure on China over Taiwan, and its provocative actions undermined regional stability and international security. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Sarakova told reporters that Moscow supported Chinese actions to defend its sovereignty.
Видим, как Вашингтон и его сателлиты продолжают нагнетать обстановку в Тайваньском проливе и препятствуют мирному объединению Китая. Они содействуют росту как раз противоположных процессов, сепаратистских настроений среди тайваньцев. Активно укрепляют военно-дипломатические контакты с островом, открыто поддерживают новую администрацию Лай Цзиньде, осуществляют поставки вооружений на Тайвань. Очевидно, что подобные провокационные действия, а мы их именно так характеризуем, западников, предпринимаемые под лозунгом якобы сохранения статус-кво в нарушение признанного имиджа принципа одного Китая, ведут к подрыву и региональной стабильности, и международной безопасности в Азиатско-Тихоокеанском регионе и являются неприкрытой формой давления на Пекин.
China's defense ministry said on Friday that U.S. arms sales to Taiwan had seriously violated China's One China principle.
中方敦促美方切实恪守一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报，立即停止武装台湾的危险趋势，停止纵容支持台独，停止破坏台海的和平稳定。中方将采取坚决有力措施， 坚定捍卫国家主权、安全和领土完整。
China on Wednesday announced steps against 9 U.S. military-linked firms over U.S. weapons sales to Taiwan. Russia fighting NATO-supplied Ukrainian forces and China under pressure from a concerted U.S. effort to counter its growing military and economic strength, increasingly have found common geopolitical costs. To the Middle East now, Israeli forces report they have killed a senior Hezbollah commander in an airstrike in a suburb of Beirut, Lebanon's capital. Lebanese health authorities confirm at least 12 fatalities and 66 injuries, with local media stating that children were among the victims.
This is the aftermath of an Israeli airstrike in a Beirut suburb on Friday, in which Israel claimed it killed a top Hezbollah commander.
וחיסל את ראש מערך המבצעים של ארגון הטרור חיזבאללה, איברהים אקיל.
Israeli military spokesperson Daniel Hagari said the attack killed Ibrahim Akil, the acting commander of the group's elite Radwan force. Hagari said the strike also killed other senior members of that unit. Lebanon's health ministry gave a preliminary toll of 12 dead and 66 wounded. The country's civil defense said its rescue teams were searching for people under the rubble of 2 buildings hit in Friday's strike. Friday's attack caps off a week that saw a stunningly deadly campaign appearing to target Hezbollah figures. On Tuesday, thousands of electronic pagers used by the group detonated. A day later, handheld radios exploded. The consecutive attacks killed 37 people, including at least 2 children, and injured more than 3,000 others. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah on Thursday blamed Israel for the blasts, saying it had crossed all red lines and vowing retribution. Israel did not comment on the detonation of the electronics. A Lebanese source familiar with the electronics components told Reuters the batteries of the walkie-talkies were laced with a highly explosive compound known as PETN.
Simultaneous targeting of thousands of individuals, whether civilians or members of armed groups, without knowledge as to who was in possession of the targeted devices, their location, and their surroundings at the time of the attack, violates international human rights law and, as applicable, international humanitarian law. International humanitarian law prohibits the use of booby-trap devices in the form of apparently harmless portable objects which are specifically designed and constructed to contain explosive material. It is a war crime to commit violence intended to spread terror among civilians.
It is still unclear how explosives made their way into so many communications devices used by the Lebanese militant group. But 2 security sources told Reuters Hezbollah was handing out pagers to its members just hours before they blew up, and the devices had been checked for threats. Akil, the commander killed on Friday, had a $7 million bounty on his head from the United States over his link to the deadly bombing of a U.S. Marine barracks in Lebanon in 1983. It marks the second time in less than 2 months that Israel has targeted a leading Hezbollah commander in Beirut. In July, an Israeli airstrike killed Fuad Shukr, the group's top military commander. Israel and Hezbollah have traded cross-border fire since October, when the Iranian-backed group fired rockets it said were in support of the Hamas attacks on Israel from Gaza. Tens of thousands of civilians have had to leave homes on both sides of the border. Israel said it is committed to returning its civilians to their homes and said it is prepared for any eventuality.
The Japanese manufacturer of the walkie-talkies linked to deadly explosives targeting Hezbollah in Lebanon, which killed dozens and injured hundreds, has denied any involvement. Yoshiki Enomoto, a director at ICOM, stated that it would be impossible for bombs to be integrated into their devices during the automated manufacturing process.
Japanese radio equipment maker ICOM said Thursday that it was looking into reports that 2-way radio devices bearing its logo have exploded in Lebanon. Handheld radios used by armed group Hezbollah detonated on Wednesday across Lebanon's south, just 1 day after similar explosions of the group's pagers. Lebanon's health ministry said 20 people were killed and 450 injured on Wednesday in Beirut's suburbs and the Bekaa Valley. The death toll from Tuesday's explosions rose to 12, with nearly 3,000 injured. Reuters was able to obtain a model of the handheld radio, said to have been used in Wednesday's attack, known as the ICV-8-2. In this video of Reuters' disassembly of the device, ICOM branding and Made in Japan labels are clearly visible. ICOM said it was not possible to confirm whether the radio product, reportedly related to the explosions, was shipped by the company. Sales of the device were reportedly discontinued about 10 years ago. ICOM said the batteries required to operate the device had also been discontinued. The company added that its products exported overseas undergo strict regulatory processes set by the Japanese government. ICOM has previously warned about counterfeit versions of its devices circulating in the market, especially discontinued models.
Meanwhile, a top United Nations official urged all countries with influence over Israel and Lebanese militant group Hezbollah to leverage it now to avoid an escalation of Middle East violence that she warned could dwarf the devastation seen so far.
As we approach a full year of near-daily exchanges of fire across the Blue Line and bloodshed in Gaza, too many lives have been lost, too many people have been displaced, and too many livelihoods have been destroyed. But if things continue as they are, we risk seeing a conflagration that could dwarf even the devastation and suffering witnessed so far. The risk to security and stability, not only in Lebanon, but also in the region, could not be clearer or graver. The Secretary General has already expressed his deep alarm over these events.
U.S. President Joe Biden remains optimistic about the possibility of reaching a ceasefire in Gaza. Biden emphasized the need for residents in northern Israel and southern Lebanon to return safely to their homes amidst ongoing conflict.
Moving this way. Moving this way. Thank you so much.
Is it realistic to get to a ceasefire deal, or have too many bad things happen that make it difficult?
If I ever said it's not realistic, we might as well leave. A lot of things don't look realistic until we get them done. We have to keep at it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for making our way up. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
And the race to the White House is on. Let's look at the update. Just weeks after Oprah's high-profile endorsement at the Democratic National Convention, the two are hoping to rally voters ahead of early in-person voting, which starts tomorrow in several states.
Destroyed. Look, my opponent, when he was told and knew about a shooting of a young girl, you know what he said? Get over it. Get over it. No, we're not getting over it. No, and to the point, everyone should have a sense of collective responsibility for the children of our community.
Yes.
And understand their right to live and be safe.
A new poll shows Harris and former President Donald Trump neck and neck nationally, each with 47%, while Harris holds a narrow lead in Pennsylvania within the margin of error.
All across our land, you've seen Jewish Americans harassed and attacked and terrorized by anti-Semites and Hamas sympathizers. I can't believe what we've been witnessing over the last year. Actually, I've watched it in great detail. I've watched it, and I've watched it take place. It's hard to believe. Yet, despite presiding over this explosion of anti-Semitism, Kamala Harris has done absolutely nothing. She has not lifted a single finger to protect you or to protect your children or to even protect you with words. I'm here today to tell the Jewish American community that this ugly tide of anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas bigotry and hate will be turned back and crushed.
On the campaign trail, Harris continues to criticize Trump's health care plans, warning that his intention is to dismantle the Affordable Care Act.
They would cut Social Security and Medicare. They intend to end the Affordable Care Act and threaten the health care of more than 5 million Latinos in our country. All based on, I'm sure many of you saw the debate, So, on that point about the Affordable Care Act, all based on concepts of a plan. Concepts.
Focusing on concerns over immigration, Trump now says he plans to visit Springfield, Ohio, where he has faced growing scrutiny over his policies and their impact on local communities.
These encounters with death have not broken my will. They have really given me a much bigger and stronger mission. They've only hardened my resolve to use my time on earth to make America great again, for all Americans to put America first. Going to put America first.
Americans began casting their first in-person votes in presidential election less than 7 weeks away that both Republican and Democratic leaders call the most important in generations. Voters in Minnesota, South Dakota, and Virginia can now go to the polls in person, while Minnesota and South Dakota voters can also mail in their ballots. These Democratic supporters in the Midwestern state of Minnesota were out early to make sure their voice was counted in the tight presidential race.
Well, I think there's really no other choice. The only candidate that makes sense, the only slate of candidates that make sense are on the Democratic side. We're not into culture wars and, silly conspiracy theories. We as Democrats are absolutely concerned about, what is best for the American people. How do we improve our living conditions? How do we improve our economy?
I'm voting for all the Democrats, every last one. Go over to them all. We need a change. We need sense in the Capitol, in the White House, and we need rights for women. We need a lot of stuff that we're not going to get on the other side.
Minnesota is the home state of Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz. The state has voted Democratic in every presidential election since 1976. In the national poll, Harris and Trump were tied at 47%. Among the 2,437 likely voters polled September 11 to the 16th, and that is according to a survey by the New York Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Siena College. The margin of error was plus or minus 3 percentage points. A U.S. Secret Service investigation has revealed critical lapses in the agency's handling of an attempted assassination of Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump during a July rally in Pennsylvania. Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe announced that those responsible for the security failures will face disciplinary actions.
This was a failure on the part of the United States Secret Service.
A U.S. Secret Service probe into the attempted assassination of Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump at a July rally found communication gaps and a lack of diligence by agency officials. Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe told reporters on Friday that those responsible would be disciplined.
The Mission Assurance Review has identified deficiencies in the advanced planning and its implementation by Secret Service personnel. These employees will be held accountable, and this agency has among the most robust table of penalties in the entirety of the federal government.
The July 13th assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, wounded Trump's ear, killed a rally attendee, and injured 2 others. The shooting led to widespread criticism of the Secret Service and the resignation of its former director, and raised concerns about how the suspect was able to access a nearby rooftop with a direct line of sight to where the former president was speaking. Acting Director Rowe defended the agency's actions in a separate apparent assassination attempt against Trump at his Florida golf club earlier this month. In that case, a Secret Service agent fired at a suspect after spotting a rifle poking through the tree line. The suspect, identified as Ryan Routh, fled, but was later arrested and charged with gun offenses.
We're at a pivotal moment in the history of the Secret Service and at a pivotal moment in the history of our country. And I've directed that the Secret Service embark on a significant paradigm shift that will redefine how we conduct protective operations. The threat is not going to evaporate anytime soon. And so we have to be prepared for this.
Rowe added that Trump was getting the same level of protection as President Joe Biden and Democratic presidential candidate Vice President Kamala Harris, his rival in the November 5th election. The internal Secret Service probe is in addition to other probes led by Congress An independent panel convened by the Department of Homeland Security and the department's internal watchdog.
Staying in the U.S., New York City police have released body camera footage of a subway shooting that left 4 people injured, including the suspect and 3 bystanders. Now, the incident began on Sunday when officers confronted a man who jumped a turnstile on the L train. The man, identified as 37-year-old Daryl Mickles, pulled out a knife and refused to drop it despite repeated warnings.
Don't touch me. Put it down. Put it down. Put it down. Put it down. Shoot. Put the knife down. Put the knife down.
The confrontation escalated into a train platform where officers deployed tasers with little effect. They were forced to open fire, striking Mickles and 2 bystanders. 1 bystander suffered severe brain damage. Surveillance footage captured the chaotic scene as passengers fled in panic. The NYPD says officers acted in self-defense to protect themselves and other passengers. Mayor Eric Adams has defended their actions. However, some city officials and advocates have criticized the incident as an example of excessive force. The footage has reignited discussions about the role of police in addressing fare evasion and mental health crisis on public transit. To Europe now, Storm Boris continues to wreak havoc across Europe, with Italy bearing the brunt of its latest fury.
Sono nata lì, 83 anni sono nata lì, però così un'acqua, ho passato la guerra, ma così un'acqua non l'ho mai avuta. Però cosa facciamo? Cosa facciamo adesso? Adesso stiamo un po' qui, poi speriamo che fra domani dovrebbero mandarci a casa. Non lo so, boh.
Severe flooding in Italy's Emilia-Romagna region has forced thousands to evacuate their homes. Landslides have disrupted roads and railways, prompting extensive rescue efforts. In the city of Faenza, rising waters have submerged entire areas, forcing residents to seek higher ground. The European Commission has pledged billions of euros to help flood-hit countries recover. President Ursula von der Leyen said Europe stands ready to support those affected.
These are extraordinary times, and extraordinary times need extraordinary measures. At first sight, 10 billion euros are possible to mobilize from the cohesion funds for the countries that are affected. This is an emergency reaction now. Thank you very much again for the fast convening of this group. And of course, we stand by your side also in the months and years to come when it is about recovery and repair from the disaster.
While the worst of the storm may be over, the threat of flooding remains high. At least 24 people have lost their lives in Poland, the Czech Republic, Romania, and Austria. Japan is facing another natural disaster, and this time in the form of heavy rainfall. The Japan Meteorological Agency has issued the highest level of emergency rain warnings for parts of Ishikawa Prefecture, including the cities of Wajima and Suzu, as well as the town of Noto. This region was already severely impacted by an earthquake on New Year's Day, and the heavy rains have exacerbated the situation. JMA official Sugimoto Satoshi warned this level of rainfall has never been seen before in the region, and residents must prioritize their safety immediately. Chief Cabinet Secretary Hayashi Yoshimasa announced the Prime Minister's directives, including close coordination with local governments for evacuation support and swift damage assessment. The Defense Ministry has deployed self-defense force personnel to affected areas, and mudslide alerts have been issued for multiple prefectures. Heavy rain is expected to continue across much of Japan in the coming days, with some regions anticipating up to 200 millimeters of rainfall. The iconic department store Harrods has been implicated in a decades-long scandal involving sexual abuse. Take a look.
We will say it plainly.
Mohammed al-Fayed was a monster.
Late Egyptian billionaire Mohammed al-Fayed sexually abused female staff for decades at his London department store Harrods, according to attorneys for the alleged victims. At a press conference Friday, lawyer Dean Armstrong said they were representing 37 women and that number would likely grow. His comments came one day after the BBC aired a documentary in which more than 20 women said al-Fayed had sexually abused and in some cases raped them. According to the program, Harrods failed to intervene and helped to cover up abuse allegations during his ownership between 1985 and 2010. Lawyer Gloria Allred is also representing alleged victims.
The store was known for catering to every need of its customers, and it was presented as the epitome of beauty. The ugly truth, however, was that a number of female employees were being sexually abused by its chairman, Mohammed al-Fayed.
Harrods issued an apology on Thursday and said it was, quote, utterly appalled by the allegations. Allred said they included serial rape, attempted rape, sexual battery, and sexual abuse of minors carried out over 25 years. Al-Fayed is also accused of forcing women to have medical screenings and threatening consequences if they complained. Natasha is one of the alleged victims.
I had walked into a lion's den, a layer of cover-ups, deceit, lies, manipulation, humiliation, and gross sexual misconduct.
Al-Fayed had always denied the claims. He died in 2023 at age 94. He is the father of Dodi Fayed, who died in the 1997 car crash that killed Britain's Princess Diana, with whom Dodi was romantically linked. Several media organizations had exposed allegations of sexual abuse against Al-Fayed in the past, including in 1995, 1997, and 2017. Lawyers on Friday said they would pursue a civil case against Harrods because of its, quote, collective corporate responsibility for what happened.
Venezuelan opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez, now in exile in Spain, just revealed that he fled the country after being warned by a security agent that authorities were coming to arrest him. In an interview on September 20, Gonzalez explained that his departure allowed him freedom to seek international support and expose Venezuela's political situation.
I had to be free to be able to do what I am doing. Telling the world what is happening in Venezuela, making contact with world leaders, telling them about Venezuela's political reality. And to do that, I have to be free and have freedom of movement to be able to do all these things. A security agent who worked with me called me to tell me that he had information from the security organizations that they were coming for me. And the most prudent thing would be to leave. They are currently in Venezuela. It is a family with 2 children. And I trust, as such, I have transmitted this in conversation with the Vice President of Venezuela, that there should be no risk whatsoever for them. That is in a document of guarantees that I signed.
Gonzalez, whom the opposition insists was the real winner of a July election awarded to Maduro, said it was probable that if he had stayed in Venezuela, he would be jailed and possibly tortured. He left for Spain after securing guarantees that his family and property in Venezuela would be safe. He added in the interview saying he wanted to be free to seek support from world leaders for his case to be president. Millions of Sri Lankans are now voting to elect a president who will steer the country's fragile economic recovery after its worst financial crisis in decades. Over 17 million people are eligible to vote, with the race being a close contest between President Ranil Wickremesinghe, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, and Marxist candidate Anyura Kumara Dissanayake. Voting began peacefully across the country early this morning. This is the first election since the 2022 economic collapse, which led to massive protests and forced former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to resign. While the economy is slowly recovering thanks to a $2.9 billion IMF bailout, high living costs remain a major concern for voters.
Honest government with good governance so that people will have confidence without corruption or anything. It should be a good government with good, honest people in good places.
I expect the country to be better, more developed, and people happy.
In other news tonight, New Zealand pilot Philip Mertens has been freed from more than 18 months in captivity in Indonesia's Papua. The Indonesian police said in a statement today.
Insurgents freed New Zealand pilot Philip Mertens after holding him captive for a year and a half in Indonesia's Papua. Mertens was kidnapped in February 2023 after he landed a small commercial plane in the remote mountainous area of Nduga. His kidnappers, the West Papua National Liberation Army, an armed wing of the Free Papua movement, seek Papua's independence from Indonesia. A range of New Zealand government agencies had been working with Indonesian authorities and others towards securing Mertens' release, according to a statement by New Zealand Foreign Minister Winston Peters. On Saturday, Peters spoke to reporters and expressed relief at the news.
Well, the hardest thing in an environment where there's no trust is to try and establish trust. Just get this one thing separated from the conflict and to get this man free. That's the hardest thing to do.
2 months ago, the separatist group signaled they would release Mertens, but said it would take time to free him. Since his capture, videos of Mertens surrounded by Papuan fighters have been released several times, with separatists calling for the United Nations to mediate talks towards Papua's independence. Papua, the western half of New Guinea Island, has seen a low-level separatist insurgency since 1969. Hostage-taking of foreigners has been rare in the region, but the conflict has escalated since 2018, with rebels mounting deadlier and more frequent attacks.
Los Angeles Dodgers superstar Shohei Ohtani has etched his name in baseball history. The two-way phenom became the first player ever to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases in a single season. He accomplished this incredible feat with a 3-homer, 2-steal performance against the Miami Marlins on Thursday night. Ohtani's power and speed were on full display. His third home run of the game, a mammoth 440-foot shot, sent Dodgers fans into a frenzy. He finished the night going 6 for 6 with 2 doubles, 3 home runs, 2 stolen bases, and a staggering 10 RBIs. The Dodgers cruised to a 24 victory, and Ohtani's historic night will be talked about for years to come.
This is a game that's been played for over 200 years. And he has done something that's never been done in this game. And it's really unprecedented. And so...
In other sports news, NBA legend Tony Parker wrapped up his 3-day sports development tour of the Democratic Republic of Congo with a visit to a local basketball academy. The former San Antonio Spurs star toured the Baller's House facility, owned by former Congolese national team player Yacine Ben Fila. Parker watched as young athletes practice their skills on the court, including shooting threes, grabbing rebounds, and running pick-and-roll plays. Parker's tour is part of his ongoing efforts to promote sports development across Africa. He's already made significant contributions to French basketball through team ownership and youth academies.
C'est vrai que le foot est numéro 1, mais le basket, je me suis rendu compte qu'il y a plein de talents ici et ils n'ont juste pas les plateformes pour réussir. Et donc c'est pour ça qu'on veut bien sûr travailler sur les infrastructures, amener le savoir-faire, venir régulièrement ici avec nos propres coachs, amener notre expertise et puis après les développer et les faire devenir pros en France.
And finally in our news, a young talented artist is taking the art world by storm. At just 3 years old, Laurent Schwartz is already making waves with his extraordinary acrylic paintings. Take a look. Now, Laurent, a native of Newbern, Germany, is holding his first vernissage. His art has been garnering incredible attention, with bids for his paintings reaching astonishing heights. Some of his works have fetched offers as high as 270,000 euros.
Dem Bild hat's, glaube ich, da geht es, glaube ich, den Sammlern um das Erstwerk. Da sind wir momentan irgendwo so bei 325.000 $. Ja, das sind unvorstellbare Summen, aber nichtsdestotrotz, wir werden nicht schwach werden. Das darf er irgendwann mal selbst entscheiden, was mit dem Ganzen passieren soll. Und dann gibt es natürlich noch die Lieblingsbilder, die werden wir auch nicht hergeben.
Wo ist die Schlange? Ja, genau. Der Hype ist natürlich unvorstellbar. Mittlerweile ist es für mich tatsächlich gar kein Hype mehr, weil ein Hype, der geht 2 Wochen, 3 Wochen. Wir haben bestimmt jetzt schon bei über einem halben Jahr, wo das durchgehend anhält. Also das ist unvorstellbar. Ich kann es mir nicht erklären. Es gibt ja Kunst, das ist ja das Schöne, das liegt im Auge des Betrachters. Für den einen ist das Kunst, für den anderen nicht. Und gerade vor einem 2-Jährigen, jetzt ja mittlerweile 3.
Even his earliest pieces are commanding significant sums. Lauren's artistic journey began just a year ago while on vacation in Italy. And since then, he has consistently created 1 painting per week. Despite the fame and attention, Lauren's parents, Lisa and Philip, emphasize that their son's passion is paramount. Lauren's art has already been showcased at prestigious events like the Art That Muck Fair in Munich. Now his first solo exhibition is taking place in his hometown.
Und jetzt Sommer nur. Ja,
NET25, your trusted source for global news, keeping you informed every day. I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back Monday. Good night.